Going. Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to jump in. We've got a full hour today, so we're just going to get right into it. Thank you all so much for being here. This is the Get Hired Strategy, How to Stop Guessing and Start Getting Offers. My name is Sydney Hughes. I'm the CEO and founder of the Colorado Career Academy. Um, So excited that you all are here. I hope this is a beneficial hour for all of you. And we're going to just talk about what the market looks like today and how we can make sure that you get to offers. All right. So first, as we're kind of getting started, there's a lot of different components to the job searching process, right? There's a lot of things that can show up as we're kind of navigating finding our new role. So I would love to know in the chat where you feel like you're getting stuck or what the biggest struggle is for you. Sometimes it's I can't get through the ATS system and I'm not getting offers for those roles. Sometimes it's, I just don't even know where to start. Like, I know that I need something different, but I don't even know where to start to look for this new role. Sometimes it's, I just feel really defeated in my job search. I'm not getting anywhere, right? Or not getting the progress that I'm looking for. So, where do you feel like you're getting stuck, or what do you feel like is the biggest struggle that you're working through right now in your search? Just go ahead and put in the chat. Not sure where to focus my vast amount of skills. Yep. How do we kind of position ourselves and talk about the skills that we have? Not able to land interviews. Yeah, I want to qualify for the jobs. Oh, so frustrating. Yeah, totally. What else? What else is coming up for you guys as you're looking for your next role? Not getting through ATS, trying to do a career change, and LinkedIn keeps recommending jobs in my field. Yeah. So like finding the right things and then also getting through that ATS. Yeah, so I hear a lot of positioning things. Pivoting, it looks like mixture of getting past the ATS and hitting second, third rounds of interviews. Okay, and then being rejected. Yeah, so maybe some interview things there. I am my biggest struggle. I want to do my own thing, but get scared. I have the skills, just need to take the leap. Oh yeah, that's a big one for sure. Awesome. Well, I always like to ask that question because obviously there's different pieces of where we can get stuck, right? But what I want you to know as far as today and why you're here is that whatever place you are at in your search, whatever you're struggling with, I hope that this is the place where you can get a lot of those answers. So I want you to know that you're in the right place if you're navigating any of those pieces. If you feel like you're, job searching constantly, you're looking for roles, you're submitting applications, and you're still just not getting the results that you want, or if you're just feeling stuck and you're like, I just don't even know what I'm doing wrong, or you're feeling qualified, but you're struggling to stand out in this crowded market, maybe even second guessing yourself, right? Of like, is now even the right time for me to go through a job search? Am I even going to be able to get to the other side of this? So, all of those things are okay. And you are in the right place if you're experiencing any of those. Um, I always think it's nice to kind of get to know your presenter a little bit too. I know I've met some of you before, and some of you this is the first time that you're maybe hearing from me. Again, my name is Sydney Hughes. I'm the CEO and founder of the Colorado Career Academy. I am Denver, Colorado based, but I work with clients all over the US and beyond. I'm also a mom of two. I have very little kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, both boys. And so I am in the thick of it, just like many of you. Our house is chaos all the time. We had an ER visit this weekend. So like I get it. It's crazy, but I think that also really informs and helps me tune in with the clients that I work with because I'm experiencing a lot of the same things that you are. I've been a certified career coach for about the past 10 years, so I've been doing this work for a long time. I'm also certified in several different assessments, the Myers-Briggs, Emotional Intelligence, and Clifton Strengths. Um, I also, kind of outside of work, I have two dogs that I love more than life itself and try to spend as much time with them as possible. And we live in Colorado, so I very much love being outside and spending time in the mountains as much as possible. But outside of all of that and why I really do this work is because I firmly believe in career alignment. Like, I believe that you have the power to design your career and what it looks like and how you work and where you work. You have control over that. And I believe that your career and motherhood should work together, not compete against each other. You shouldn't have to choose one or the other. They should be able to work in alignment and allow you to feel like you can show up in both. So that's why we're here today, and that's what we're going to talk about. All right, so what's coming up? First, we're going to talk about just the job market in 2026, right? I think a lot of people are really struggling with navigating this market. And so we're going to talk about why that is, what's going on in the 2026 market, and just kind of a lay of the land a little bit. We'll talk about applying in 2026 and why it's different than the markets that we've navigated before. I'll give you some ATS system tips. So for anyone who's struggling to navigate and get through kind of that first layer, we'll talk about the ATS system, what that is, how to navigate it, and some tips for that. We'll also talk about what really moves the needle and the MVP in the job search process. There will be a short offer at the end. So if you feel like you need a little bit more support and you're interested in working together, I'll share a little bit about how I work with clients. And then we'll also have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any specific questions about your job search and what you're navigating, please bring them to the Q&A at the end and I'll answer whatever you got. So that'll be kind of our agenda for today and what we're going to focus on. All right. So let's talk about the job market in 2026. So what we are currently experiencing with the market is called a low fire, low hire environment, which means there's not a lot of movement in the market overall, right? So 2025, we saw a lot of layoffs. We saw just an insane amount of layoffs, a lot of people losing their roles or changing roles, being let go from their organization. So we had a ton of movement in 2025, which kind of created this stagnant market in 2026. So we don't have a lot of people leaving roles, but we also don't have a lot of new roles available. On top of that, or I guess, kind of in junction with that, the average job search now is taking about 7 months. Prior to this, a couple years ago, the average was like 3 to 4 months. And so it has increased significantly for several different reasons, but it's taking longer for people to find roles. Some of that is due to just less job availability. There's also higher competition. AI is playing a big role in that. So a lot of different factors that are contributing, but it's just taking longer for folks to get into roles. We've also seen less job postings year after year. So each year we've seen about a 10% decrease in available roles. So each year that we kind of move forward, we see less jobs on the market. What that means is that, sorry, one more person, I'll let in here. What that means is that a lot of companies are maybe posting positions, but they might not be posting all of their roles. There are a lot more things being filled behind the scenes in the hidden market. And so, in order to land a role, you really have to know how to navigate that hidden market piece of it in order to land the job. We're also seeing an increase in ghost jobs. So that was kind of the big term a couple of years ago, but it's still a thing. There are a lot of positions out there that might not actually be available. And again, ghost jobs can be, kind of several different things. It could be that organization posted a position and they just haven't taken it down yet. It could be that they're fishing for information and just trying to get free advice basically from job seekers. It could be that they have kind of like a rolling application process and they're just kind of seeing who all is out there until they have the best fit. There are a lot of different reasons for it, but there are still quite a few ghost jobs out there. So a lot of times what I'll hear from clients is like, I applied for this job and heard back that I didn't get it, and then they reposted the position. And sometimes when we hear things like that, again, there's a number of different reasons that that can happen, but those types of things are happening much more frequently in today's market. Application volume is up, right? We have a lot more competition for fewer roles. So less roles available and more people applying. I had a client who applied for a role that had 2,500 applicants. Like, it's an insane number of applicants for a lot of these roles. There's also AI apps now that you can submit your resume into, and it will just apply for all of these jobs for you. So no longer is AI just updating resumes. Now it's actually applying to these roles for us. So that's also increasing competition and putting strain on the companies and the recruiter and HR systems who are trying to kind of filter through all of those applications. However, even with all of these things happening, most job seekers are still relying on job boards to find positions because that's just kind of the way that things have always been done, right? We've always, since 2008, when we had the Great Recession and this big boom in ATS systems and applying online, ever since then, this has become kind of the norm and the way for applying for roles. So a lot of people are still relying on those general job boards to find positions. But we know that the success rate of applying for roles online continues to decrease year after year. So 2 years ago, it was 4%. Now it's 2%. If you're only applying for jobs through job boards, you have a 2% success rate of landing a job, which is crazy to me. Hopefully that sinks in, that just like a lot of people only spend their time on that, but your return on that is so much smaller. So we'll talk about what the approach will look like today. But we really need to be kind of diversifying how we look for roles. We talked a little bit about the AI side of things. That's also affecting, the amount of roles that are coming on the market. So AI is replacing some roles or being a part of some roles. So that's also kind of affecting what is available in the market. Consumer spending is softening. We have less people buying products and things, and there's still a lot of freezes in effect. And so that's also affecting the market. And because of all of this, a lot of workers are also job hugging. A lot of people are staying in their roles, even if they hate it or they want to go into something else just because of the market instability and they're not quite sure what's going on. One thing I forgot to mention earlier on is that I always try to encourage networking during these workshops as well. So if you're open to networking, I would recommend that you drop your LinkedIn in the chat so that you can connect with other folks that are on this call if you aren't already. It's a great chance to kind of open the door, meet some other folks, and you never know what that connection is going to lead to, right? What opportunities might come from that. So go ahead and then drop your LinkedIn in the chat, maybe what you do or what you're looking for, and we can help get some networking started in today's workshop. All right. So what actually gets you hired in 2026? So I told you all I've been doing this for a long time, and we've had to refine and kind of adjust what the strategy looks like over that time based on what the current market looks like. So what I recommend at this point for this market, it's what I call a multidimensional approach. You need to have multiple different avenues that allow people to notice your expertise, understand what you do, um, see the opportunity in what you're presenting to people, and allow you to position yourself in the right way. So you really need to be doing all three of these things in order to land that next role. If we just rely on one or the other, it's not going to get us there. So what does that look like? We're going to kind of dive into each one of these. All right, so let's talk about resume and ATS tips. So for anyone who's not familiar with an ATS system, it stands for Applicant Tracking System. So like I mentioned, back in 2008 is really when the ATS systems kind of came into our world for job searching. And at the beginning, it really was this way for companies to just track applications because they were getting this influx of people looking for roles because we were in the middle of the Great Recession. And they needed a way to be able to track the high volume of applications that they were receiving. So that was kind of the start of ATS systems. And since then, they've really been refined and just kind of grown in their capability since then. So now, pretty much anywhere that you're looking for a role, at some point, you will have to apply through an ATS system to get through the avenue of getting the role. So the thing with ATS systems now is that a lot more companies are using them to filter through applications. So instead of it just being this kind of platform for us to, know who's applying and what materials they submitted. Now companies are putting in, what qualifications they're looking for, what skill sets, how many years of experience. They can put in the filter criteria and filter through applications that way, right? And see who meets that criteria. So that's why it's so much more important now that you're really specific about tailoring and how you frame and position yourself for these roles. Because if we don't meet that criteria, we're never going to get through the system. Um, so, one thing that I always tell my clients, and this I cannot emphasize enough, a lot of times, especially now, it's trial and error. So if you're submitting the same thing over and over again, or you're not making kind of overhauls every few weeks, we're probably not going to get there. So the whole point of the resume is to get us to the interview. If you are not getting interviews, your resume is not working. So even if you've made minor tweaks or you've adjusted, or maybe you've done a full overhaul of it, if it's not getting you to the interview, it's not working. So we need to go back again and problem solve to figure out like, what am I missing? Why is this not getting through the system and positioning me for this type of role? So I know, Katie, you had a question in here about like how to position yourself with lots of different experience, right? And what I would say is that whenever you're applying for a role, the way that I look at it is that when a company posts a position opening, it's because they have a problem to solve, right? They're trying to get somebody in as fast as humanly possible, but they're also really specific about getting the right person right now. So it has to be like so obvious to them that you are the right fit in order to make it through that system. So we really need to make sure that whatever we're applying for, even if you have a broad skill set, you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself for that role. So what I encourage clients to do is like, if you're, let's say you've got like, well, operations, project management, and product management or something, right? We've got like a wider experience. If they're only looking for somebody in operations, then you only want to talk about your operations experience on your resume to make sure that it gets through that system. You want to be really specific because you're trying to solve the problem. When you get into the interview, you can talk about all of the different things that you do, but you need to tailor and be specific when you get into that, when you're applying to get past the ATS system. Um, Recently, sorry, I was just seeing your comment in here. Recently revamped from analytics plus operations. Recently revamped from analytics plus operations to operations plus analytics just to stop getting rejections. Yeah, and I would try different things, right? So if you feel like you're getting rejected for like one type of resume, um, I would switch it up like it sounds like you're doing and kind of see what gets through. But if you feel like there's a piece of it that's not talked about at all in the job description, like let's say it's operations, but they don't mention analytics at all, I would just remove the analytics part and focus on operations or vice versa, right? Okay, so a couple like quick tips as far as the ATS system goes. Always avoid easy apply. Like that's just not even helpful for anybody. The reason being is because when you click on Easy Apply, it doesn't allow you, like you can submit a new resume, but LinkedIn, let's say you're using LinkedIn and the Easy Apply, LinkedIn has its own ATS system that it will decide if you're qualified for that role before it even gets to the company. So you're basically jumping through two hoops instead of one. If you just go directly to the company website, it allows you to skip the whole hoop from LinkedIn to begin with. So always avoid Easy Apply where you can. Focus on quality over quantity. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in my 10 years, like it's a numbers game. At some point it'll click. It's not a numbers game. It's the same concept as the problem to solve, right? Like if somebody says I really need somebody who has a focus in operations and you come in with marketing experience, right? We're not going to solve their problem for them. So you really need to make sure that you are focused on them and what they need and solving that problem. I'm always a big advocate for including a skills section, especially now because we know that the ATS systems are filtering for specific skills. So it makes it really easy for recruiters and hiring managers to see that you have the skills that they're looking for. And you want to list it exactly like they have it on their job description. You don't want to use something that's similar or that you think is the same thing. Use their language because that's what they're searching for. We've talked about kind of the company pain point and solving that problem for them. Impact is another big piece of today's market. Sorry, somebody else to let in here. Impact is a huge piece of getting into the role. It's a skills and impact based market. And so if you aren't showing the results, the impact, the outcome of what it was that you're doing, it's going to be really hard for them to understand the context and why they should bring you on. So I would recommend you go through and scan your resume. And if you don't have a result or an outcome or impact at the end of every bullet point, go back and ask yourself, what was the point of me doing this thing? Why was I responsible for that? How did it impact the company? How did it impact the team or the product, right? You want to make sure that you have some sort of impact that you can showcase. I always recommend writing a cover letter. I know a lot of people hate cover letters, myself included. I don't like writing them, but when you are going up against other candidates, 99% of people don't write them. And when you do, it gives you a chance to put yourself back in, like it puts the human back in the process, right? Because it allows you to talk about who you are, how you operate, why you would be a good fit. And when I was hiring for roles, if I would have two candidates that were maybe great on paper, right? Their resume got through the ATS and they matched the skills and qualifications that we were looking for, I would go to the cover letter and say, like, okay, great. Now I know that you can do the job based on your resume, but now I want to know why. Why do you want this job and why do you want to work for our company? Because then it becomes more about culture fit and who you feel like is going to assimilate into your culture, right? One quick suggestion that I have used a lot is um, if you feel like, let's say you're submitting applications and you're not getting through the ATS system, and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing wrong. Copy and paste the job description into like a word cloud generator. I really like Tag Crowd. Copy and paste the job description into Tag Crowd and then copy and paste your resume into a separate one and see what shows up. Because a word cloud is going to show you, right, the words that you use the most, what's showing up with a lot of frequency in both of those, and you can see if you're even hitting the mark. If you've got totally different words coming up on both of those, then like we're not going to get through the ATS because we're not using their language enough. And then lastly, focus on your differentiator, right? So what makes you different? What value do you bring? Those are things that you can include in the summary at the top of your resume to really help give people a picture of who you are, where you focus, and what you would bring into the role. All right. So let's talk about the MVP. The MVP is networking, and it always has been, but truly getting a job in this market, if you are not networking, it's going to take years for you to get there, right? If we want to speed this process up, we need to be networking and talking with people. It's still the most beneficial and successful way of getting a role is through networking. 85% of hires come through connections. A lot of times I get questions on this, like, well, how do I actually do that? What does that look like? Or maybe you're already doing some networking and you just feel like it's not working or being fruitful for you. And the next couple of slides, we're going to talk through a specific strategy that you can use for networking that I have found to be really successful in getting you in front of the right people, making sure that you can land the roles right and set up those conversations. But generally, you want to be having at least 500 connections on LinkedIn. That is like bare minimum to make sure that you have enough connections to interact with, that showcases that you're building your LinkedIn or you have an established presence on LinkedIn. But ultimately, you really want to focus on just developing genuine connections. I think networking tends to trip a lot of people up because it feels networking still has this connotation that we have to walk into a room where we don't know anybody and strike up a conversation. And that is not networking. Networking is any way that you're building connections. That can be having a conversation on LinkedIn. It can be coming to a workshop like this. It could be standing in line at the grocery store or um, at a soccer game and talking with another parent. It happens everywhere. It's just how you look at it that really allows you to kind of open up and have, those conversations that ultimately can lead to some opportunities. I recommend using a tiered networking approach and building an intentional strategy. So my approach to networking is always like start with who you already know, right? Make a warm lead list of people that you've previously worked with, of could be family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, parents at school, right? Parents that are on the PTO. Like it could be people that you already kind of see in your daily life, but who doesn't know that you're looking for the next role? Because it can come up in the conversations, right? Of just like, how have things been going? What have you been up to? And you can casually drop, oh, I'm, looking for something else. And this is kind of what I'm shooting for. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just by letting somebody know that you are looking for something else, it opens a door, right? It allows us to be able to start those conversations and just kind of keep expanding our network. I find a lot of people are really hesitant to schedule coffee chats or virtual informational interviews. You can call them career conversations or whatever you want, but having just a general conversation with somebody really goes a long way. And you would be surprised when you start reaching out how many people are willing to meet with you and offer advice or just talk with you about your search and what it looks like. So I would highly encourage you to reach out and just talk with folks about your situation and what you're looking for. Um, Always focus on kind of second degree connections or people that are 1 to 2 levels above your target role. That'll get you to the hiring managers and the ones that are the decision makers that really can move the needle in the job search and the ones that have more control over what those roles look like, right? So we'll talk a little bit about this too, but the whole point of networking, a lot of times I hear from folks like, well, I don't have a very big network. I don't have a lot of people that I know in my network, which usually you have more than you think. But it's not necessarily about who you know, it's about who they know, right? You're just trying to access other people's networks by asking questions like, who else would you recommend that I meet with? That one question alone opens up a whole new can of worms for you, right? Of being able to tap into their network and who they really think you should connect with. So it's really just about trying to ask the right questions, set the intentional meetings, and be yourself and just develop a genuine connection. All right, so let's talk a little bit about a networking approach. So, again, I get this question a lot. Like, I'm networking, I'm doing the meetings, I'm talking with people, but I'm still not getting there. Well, that means that it's usually in how you have your networking strategy set up, how you go into those conversations, or maybe you're not even asking for things in those conversations, right? It's all about kind of how are you positioning yourself once you get into those to make sure that they're fruitful for you. So here's a networking strategy that has worked really well for my clients. Um, the first piece of it is just growing your network each week. So you want to make sure that you are actively adding new people to your network each week. And I recommend a small number, right? 2 to 3 new connections each week. Could be something on LinkedIn, where you're just kind of searching for people that are in roles that you're interested in. Could be somebody who works at a company that's of interest to you. Could be a friend of a friend, right? Second or third connection in there. But you want to actively be adding new people each week. Um, what else do I want to say? Oh, and then so we kind of mentioned some of these, right? Connecting with people who are at target companies, prioritizing second degree connections. But a lot of times there might be people who you already know or who you have worked with that you're not connected with on LinkedIn. So I would again recommend you just kind of think back past 10 years, right? Who have you worked with? Who haven't you talked with in a while? Is there a previous supervisor that maybe you're not connected with? Those are all really low hanging fruit that can help you kind of increase your network and also just get you back top of mind with some of these folks. Next, I would recommend that you schedule 1 to 2 informational interviews per month. And again, we can call them coffee chats or career conversations, whatever you want. But scheduling meetings with somebody that you haven't talked to in a while or a new connection that you're looking to, develop a relationship with or a rapport with, you want to be actively scheduling new conversations each month. Um, the way that I always kind of describe this is when you go into those conversations, I recommend that you put the emphasis on them. A lot of times I'll get the question like, well, who's going to want to meet with me? Aren't people just going to say no if I ask for their time? But I have found that when you put the emphasis on them and say, hey, I'm so blown away by your experience or by your career trajectory or how you got to where you are. Would you be willing to talk with me for 15 to 20 minutes about just what your career has looked like so far and how you got to where you are, right? When you say something like that, the other person is like, wow, I thought I was just showing up and doing the thing, but like here's somebody who really wants to hear about my story. So when you kind of pump the other person up and you're genuinely curious about what it is that they do and how they got there, I find that the vast majority of people will say yes and give you the time. Ways you can do that, you can ask for a Zoom call, right? Phone call or coffee chat if they're local. Um, if you're actively searching, I would bump this number up. I would try to do 3 or 4 a month, right? One each week is a pretty low lift to just try and meet with more people and have more of those conversations. And again, as far as what you can talk about, you can ask them about their career trajectory. You can ask what they've learned, right? Is there anything that surprised you or that you've learned along the way? If they work at a company that you really want to work at, right? Like how's their experience? What's it actually like to work there? How they get into it? What advice would they have for someone searching? That kind of stuff. And then lastly, I would recommend that you attend one networking event per month. I think far, far too many people are afraid of putting themselves out there, of really just trying to try something different or attend an event because, again, it feels like we're just walking into a room full of people we don't know, right? But even stuff like this can count as a networking event each month. And there's tons of stuff that happens virtually or locally in your area. I would find the things that feel comfortable to you, that feel like they're a good match for where you are, right? It's the type of people that you want to be in the room with so that it doesn't have to feel like this staunchy, weird networking thing where you don't know anybody. It's just a chance for you to have conversations and meet different types of people than you normally would. It also gives you a chance to practice your elevator pitch. So, getting comfortable with small talk and really trying to just be comfortable talking about yourselves. I think there's also a lot of folks who are hesitant to talk about themselves positively or share what their strengths are. So, this is a great opportunity for you to practice that. Um, it can be things again like this. It could be a formal networking event, through your community or a job searching network or something like that. But it also could be a yoga class, right? Or it could be a mom meetup group, or it could be, again, like, I don't know, PTO or something like that. But going to something where you're putting yourself in a room with different types of people than maybe you're normally around or who don't know that you're searching yet is really, really valuable in your search. Um, and lastly, it's really just about showing up consistently. Your network should always be constantly built. It should never be something that we just lean on when we really need it. You want to make sure that you're constantly networking, talking with people, and showcasing your skills, your strengths, right? And what you really bring to the table. All right, so that's networking. So the last piece of it is about your brand and securing your brand and positioning yourself. So for years, I told people you don't need a LinkedIn, you don't need to have an online presence if you don't want one, right? If you want to use it, you can, but if you don't want one, you don't have to. I don't believe that anymore. After everything that I've read and been through with clients over the past few years, you need to have a brand in 2026. Companies and employers are expecting that they can get onto LinkedIn and find you. And if you don't, it creates more red flags and question marks for them than it really should. When in reality, it could just be that you don't want to be on LinkedIn. So you really need to have at least some sort of a presence so that when you get through the system, right, you get through the ATS system and you get to usually if they're at the point of like calling you in for an interview, that's where you really want to, that's where they're going to your profile to see like who is this person before they come in for the interview, right? So it's no longer optional to have an online brand. You really need to have that presence. But it can look differently. You don't need to be a content creator. You don't need to post every day, but it means that you're active on LinkedIn, right? You have a built out profile that really showcases your strengths and your skills. You're maybe liking or commenting on posts, maybe sharing some of your own ideas. It doesn't have to be, again, a 24/7 thing, but even 20 minutes a day, right, makes a huge difference because it allows them to see a different side of you than what they're going to get from the resume or the cover letter or your application. LinkedIn's also a great place to have references and testimonials. So I highly recommend if you don't already have those on your profile, you should be working on them to make sure that you have people who are talking about you, your work ethic, right? What you bring to the table, what you value. And ideally, if you can get people from different kind of levels, that's like perfect. You want to have somebody maybe that you supervised, a peer or a colleague, and then somebody who's above you, who can talk about different pieces of who you are and how you operate, and what that really looks like. Um, sorry. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I think I cut someone off. Question? Okay. Well, feel free to jump back on if someone had a question. Um, You want to also be looking for opportunities to upskill or places that you can really showcase your ability. So if you're doing any like certifications or trainings or things like that, where you can showcase that in this job search, you are also kind of actively working on upskilling, LinkedIn is a great place to be able to showcase that. You can also position yourself as someone who can partner with AI. This is a really big conversation right now. AI is here. It's infiltrating our workforce like crazy. It's in a lot of companies. It's being used in different ways, right? And so you need to be showcasing that you can work with it. A lot of organizations are really focusing on just making sure that you're not going to be someone who's hesitant to change, that you can showcase that you at least are interested or learning more about it or trying to kind of work with it as opposed to against it. And it's also a great place for you to be able to track and document your accomplishments, and what that looks like. So that's what I would recommend as far as the job searching strategy for right now is making sure that you're hitting those 3 points, right? The resume and the ATS and applying online, the networking strategy and getting to the right people and having the conversations, and then also creating your online brand and making sure that you're showcasing how you show up, what your work ethic is, what your approach is, why you do this work, all of those things are extremely important. So I want to talk a little bit about my story and my system and how I work with clients, because I think it's important for people to hear different career stories. So, like most people, my career just kind of snowballed me. I went to college, I got the degree, I started working, kind of went down this path. And at some point, I just realized that I had never actually stopped to think about what I wanted. But it wasn't really until I became a mom that whole thing kind of hit me, right? I was a brand new mom. I was deep in the postpartum phase. I was trying to function in a job that just didn't work with the life that I was building at home. And I loved my job. I loved what I did. I loved who I worked with, but It was the environment, it was the commute, it was just feeling like I was missing out on so much time at home that really made it hard for me to feel like it was sustainable anymore. It just felt like I got to a point where it was like, okay, like something has to change. I can't do this anymore. And so I started to dig in and I really got clear on what was missing. I got honest about where I wanted to go. And most importantly, I allowed myself to really dream again. Like, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I want to do? Where would I want to take my career and my life? And this is where my program really started to take shape because I took everything that I knew about career development and how people choose career direction, how we understand our strengths, how we uncover what lights us up, and I paired it with everything that I had learned from coaching thousands of clients. I looked at all the patterns that I had seen over the years, what worked and what didn't, right? What held people back and what moved them forward. I pulled out every presentation, every worksheet, every tool, every exercise that I had ever created, and I started refining them. I got certified in additional assessments. I coached, programs and cohorts and groups of people through their job searches. And every time that I learned something new, I folded it back into the system. And eventually, after all of these years of kind of testing and tweaking and rebuilding, it became a full structured program. And that is what really led me to launch the Colorado Career Academy. But here's the part that I really want you to know. I chose to work specifically with working moms on purpose. I have coached people from 18 to 65 across every industry and level in corporate and government, nonprofit, education, all of it. But when I became a mom, something just clicked. There was this instant connection that you just feel with moms. You don't have to explain the chaos, right? You just get it. We understand the pressure and the weight. We understand what it feels like to want a meaningful career and to be able to show up fully at home. And I just felt like our workforce makes it really hard for moms to do both because it tells us daily that we're not enough or that we're behind or that we should just be grateful for what we have, right? And honestly, I think that's total bullshit. So I have been on this really loud, passionate mission to help moms find companies and roles that celebrate them as a working mom, that value what moms bring, that don't punish you when your kid is sick or when daycare calls in the middle of the day, right? And every single month, my clients are landing roles at companies exactly like that. And I want as many moms as possible to be able to do that. So I want to share with you something I'm really excited to launch. I am launching a new offer called the Career Alignment Studio, which is a program that was built from everything that I just described and specifically designed for moms just like you. So over the past few months, I have looked at all of the patterns, the challenges, the barriers that moms are facing right now. And I made sure that every tool and every exercise and every strategy was built to meet you exactly where you are. Because this market that we are in right now, the 2026 market, is very different from what worked even 2 or 3 years ago. And so a lot of people are feeling like they're doing the right things and they're focusing in the right areas and they're still not getting the results that they want. So I wanted to create something that allows you to be able to do this in a way that matches your life right now, right? It lets you fit this in the nooks and crannies of time that you have, but also matches your budget and where you're at in this phase of life. So the program format is a 12-week coaching program, really designed to be around two different areas. It's clarity and execution. So first, we really want to dig into what it is that's going to be the right fit for you. The strategy part is extremely important, right? You want to make sure that you have a good strategy, but without knowing what the ideal job is for you and what you really want to do, that strategy won't do anything. You have to have a clear picture of what that looks like first in order to land this role. So we do a lot of deep work around imposter syndrome, overcoming self-doubt, getting you to actually see yourself in this next role. We use personalized assessments around your strengths, your personality, your values, and your interests to identify your ideal job fit, in order to make sure that we know what role is going to be the best fit for you right now. And then after we get through the clarity work, we get really tactical. We build a a specific job search strategy for you. We update resume, cover letter, your LinkedIn. We work on creating your personal brand, right? Prepping you for interviews and making sure that you go into those salary negotiations, getting the compensation that you are worth. So the part that I think is really, really cool about this that I'm excited about is that the job search right now can feel really defeating. I think a lot of people are feeling like they're alone trying to figure this out and it's really hard to do that process by yourself. And so with this program, you also get a community of women who are navigating this exact same journey by your side. Women who can celebrate your wins, who can keep your spirits up when things are hard, right? Give you the motivation on top of having me as your coach to help support and guide you throughout this process as well. So this program is going to launch June 8th. I see my pricing is a little messed up, but right now I'm offering founding member pricing. The regular price of the program is $19.95, but the founder member price takes $500 off, and you can get the full program for $14.95. So that founding member pricing is for the first 20 women that enroll in the program. If you're interested in learning more about the program, you can scan the QR code at the top. That'll take you to the website and you can read all about it and reserve your spot if you're interested. All right. If you have questions and you want to learn more about what working with me looks like or get additional support in your search, this QR code is for scheduling a call with me if you want to do a discovery call and talk a little bit further. Um, with that, I'm going to put the link to the studio in the chat. And if anybody has questions for the Q&A portion of this, I am happy to take those or questions about what we talked about today. Um, I'm an open book, so let me know what you've got. Questions about your search or you're struggling with any of the content from today. I have one chat in here. Let's see if I name of my favorite word cloud site product. Yeah, it's called Tag Crowd. I can put that in the chat too. That's a really great website to create a word cloud for your resume and the job description. Let me put this in the chat for you. It's free, super easy to use, but it really gives you a really good picture of kind of where you're at. Other questions? Going once, going twice. Curious what you think about okay, let's see. I got some questions. Okay. Curious what you think about ladders, you exact others. I know these are job boards you talked about, but wondering about your experience. Um, Russ, can you tell me a little bit more? Like what questions you have? Like, are they good job boards or beneficial or what kind of questions you have around that? Um, do you suggest sending personal messages on LinkedIn to recruiters/employers after applying for a job? Yeah, it's a great question. Um, it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of sending those because it depends. It depends on the type of role. So, like, let's say that the company is pretty active on LinkedIn, then I would say yes. If they're posting actively and you can tell that they use LinkedIn quite a bit, they posted the job through that, right? You have a recruiter listed as somebody on the contact for the role, then I would say yes. But a lot of times I'll get people who will try to like find the person, maybe doesn't have somebody listed on that job description when they're applying for the role. And typically, if they're not putting it there, they don't necessarily want to be found. So I would say it's always okay to follow up. If you applied for a role, right, and it's been a couple of weeks and you haven't heard anything back, like finding the hiring manager or finding an HR recruiter, totally okay to reach out and just say I applied for this role. I was wondering if there's been any progress or if you've made any decisions regarding next steps. Things like that are completely okay. But I would say kind of feel it out to see like how active they are. Because again, recruiters and organizations are getting bombarded with applications right now. So you you want to be able to put yourself forward, right? And like top of mind with them, but you also want to be mindful of kind of how they would prefer that candidates reach out to them. Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see what else we got. I would love advice on interviewing with AI. Raylene, do you mean like when you go through the videos that when they have you submit like a video type thing? That's here. Looks like Russ. Mostly are they good compared to LinkedIn? Um, so I haven't used some of those. I haven't used Ladders or UExec. A lot of the job boards, it just kind of depends on your specific industry area. LinkedIn, LinkedIn kind of goes in phases. So it's still the most widely used job board. I also think it's beneficial because you can connect with the recruiter if they have it posted on there. But especially lately, there's been more ghost jobs and there's just not as much of a like credibility to some of the positions that are being posted. I'm not as familiar with the other ones that you suggested on there, but I would say everything is trial and error, right? Someone's calling my phone. I'm gonna put this on do not disturb. So trial and error to see kind of what works and what doesn't. If those ones, if you, read the job description, see if they look like credible sources. If you're seeing them across other job boards, that can also help as well. But I would trial and error to kind of see what you feel like works best for you. Um, I've been using an AI apply app, but I am getting rejected almost right away. So now I'm back to applying on the company websites and trying to get referrals. Yeah, I would highly discourage you from using any of those AI apps to apply for roles. Um, it's not helpful. There's a lot of companies that can scan for whether or not you used an AI app to apply for roles. So really, if you're going to apply for positions online through the company website, you need to be doing it yourself. Don't go through those AI apps. It's the same thing as Easy Apply. You're kind of wasting your time when you use those because it's just giving them a cookie cutter right version of your resume. They can track for whether or not you're using that app. So I would not recommend using those questions. Interviewed with an AI recruiter on Friday and I did. Oh yeah, the one-way videos are really tough. The best advice that I can give you is you gotta practice, right? So you know that like they're just uncomfortable because it's a one-way conversation, and so the only way to get through that is to practice. You can use, there's a really good site. LinkedIn used to have a LinkedIn used to have a free like interview tool that you could use. Now they've included it with premium, so kind of depends on if you have that or not. But I'm going to drop another one in here too. Teal is also a good one to practice if you want to practice with those AR interviews and just get a little bit more comfortable. If you don't want to use a site like that, honestly, just recording yourself, right? Like how you respond to. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why do you want this job? Usually those AI interviews are kind of the first step. So they're, early on in the process, they're going to ask you probably those general interview questions. And so you can just practice those as you kind of go through that interview to help a little bit. And that way, you're going to be your best judge to really figure out what needs to tweak or change based on your responses. Good question. So anything else? Do you have any advice around applying, interviewing while pregnant? I'm probably going to do a workshop on this at some point because I get this question a lot. Um, I have been through this process. I actually, a few years ago, when I had my last full-time job, I was 7 months pregnant when I started. So very familiar with that process. And there's such a lack of resources around when to tell an employer, how to tell an employer, what's going to happen if you tell an employer. It's really still, there's just not a lot of access to figuring out how to navigate that. So here is what my suggestion is. Um, there's still a lot of discrimination in the process. So I wish it was not that way. And I wish I could tell you, like, you can disclose it and people will think it's the best thing ever, as they should. But there will still be a lot of people who are going to discount you from the process just because you are pregnant, which sucks. It should not be happening, but it does. Um, so what I would recommend is I typically, for clients and for myself, I didn't disclose that I was pregnant until I had an offer because you want to make sure that you have the most leverage as possible for when you're in that position, right? If the employer is truly parent friendly and they want to be flexible with you, they will figure out a way to make it work, especially for somebody who's the right fit, right, for their organization. If they truly are the right place for you, they will make it work. So I would say wait until you have the offer and then negotiate what that looks like, right? I think there's still a lot of places that, um, can't offer you benefits. When I started, I wasn't able to get paid full time while I was on maternity leave. So I took an unpaid maternity leave, but I negotiated the time off because I wanted to make sure I had that more than anything else. Now there's 15 states that offer state paid family leave. And so if you live in one of those states, you can also look into that and provide that as an option. That relieves some of the costs on the organization. And so it makes it a lot easier for them to offer you leave because it's covered by the state. And so then again, you're kind of just talking about the time. Happy to talk about that more in detail. If you ever want to schedule a call or really like dive into it, I'm always happy to discuss, but those are kind of my general thoughts. And like I said, at some point I might have a workshop on this because I get that question almost every day. All right. Any other questions? We'll have time for one more before we jump off. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here. It was so great to have you all on the call today. I hope this was helpful. I would love to support you if you need that down the road, so don't hesitate to reach out. But thanks so much for being here, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.